इंडिया का वर्ल्ड में क्या रोल है? चाइना तो पूरा कर रहा है, डीप सी, यूएस is clear. So this sparked a thought. We know the employment is going to be challenged in all our big IT services companies. Is it India's moment with getting this FDE thing? We say make in India, we could also say train in India.
Professions which are coming up, whether it's FDE, any other sector, use AI for design, use AI for animation, filmmaking, creative fields. So those are the opportunities that we have to identify, come out with a structured skilling training program and ensure that we retain our advantage in this.
I've always thought that we have a structural advantage because we have DPI and we have this consent layer that you can access the data for every Indian, which means almost like a personalized AI can be made for every Indian. Do you think that structural advantage can be utilized, and where are we on that journey?
See, like our DEPA architecture that we conceptualized first in 2015, which allowed consent-based data sharing, that has been the cornerstone for our development of India stack or development of services. How we can build up a layer of AI over DPI, and very often I like denote it in the sense of DPI raised to the power of AI.
What does success look like in your mind for 5 years out? Is this a thought process of the next gen? Now, how do we get to the next stage?
If we kind of ensure that smartness and intelligence is made available as a service to every Indian in every sector, and we ensure that every sector becomes more efficient and more productive, whether it's agriculture or whether it's MSME or whether it's retail. And what we have tried in some of the projects that we have done is that when it works, voice input and voice output, then you don't even need a smartphone. You can do with a feature phone with a toll-free number on which you call, voice is the input, and backend pe aapka sara speech to text and the Gen AI APIs and all will work. But ultimately, if in real time, if you are able to give the right answer in the mother tongue of the person who is making the query, it will be transferred.
Government and policymakers have played a very constructive role, whether it was in UPI, then Aadhaar and DPI, and now again with the AI mission. Talk us a little bit through these 7 pillars of this mission and your vision for it.
So,
Hi, I'm Rajinder Balaraman. We're at the nerve center of India's AI journey today at the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, where the CEO of India's AI Mission, Abhishek Singh, is scripting India's AI playbook. We're launching a new series today titled Intelligent Indians, which documents India's AI build-out as it happens, not years later in hindsight. If you're building an AI, tune into the series and reach out to us at intelligentindians@z47.com.
Thank you everyone for joining us for this pretty special podcast. The topic is India's AI moment, and we are here to meet the man behind the mission, the AI mission. Welcome Abhishek sir to the podcast. Mr. Abhishek Singh is the CEO of India's AI mission, Additional Secretary Government of India, and has 30 years of experience in government and policy. He's also an alumnus of IIT Kanpur and Harvard. Also joining me is my founding partner Avnish, who shares both IIT Kanpur and Harvard as alma mater with Abhishek sir, though I suspect he was a far better student.
More illustrious.
no ways, no ways.
Avnish is one of the most AI first people that I know, and also investing in the AI space. I'm Vikram Vaidyanathan. I lead all our investments in software and AI as well as in the fintech space. Abhishek sir, I'll start with you. In the technology space, India has always had this unique distinction that government and policymakers have played a very constructive role, whether it was in UPI, then Aadhaar and DPI, and now again with the AI mission. Talk us a little bit through these 7 pillars of this mission and your vision for it.
Thank you for doing this. It's great to meet Avnish after a long time, one of the most illustrious batchmates of our class. And yes, and we follow the work that you all do in this sector. It's very, very important for India's tech ecosystem, AI ecosystem to set its place amongst the global AI ecosystem that's evolving. So, as you rightly said, we have been like using technology for improving governance, primarily because the huge numbers we have, because to manage 1.4 billion people, to ensure access to services, there is no other option but to leverage technology. And that's how Mr. Nandan Nilekani gave us the vision for having Aadhaar, a unique ID for everyone, that led to direct benefit transfers, cash transfers, that led to UPI, DigiLocker, and this entire story of India's digital transformation is well documented. Now we are at the AI age, and AI, of course, it has been around for a long time, but since the ChatGPT moment, it has become like more productized and more people are aware that AI exists and AI has the potential of doing more. So what we are looking at AI is how it can add value to the DPI that we have implemented. More so, given the diverse country that we have, especially 22 official languages, multiple dialects, voice-enabled services, how we can build up a layer of AI over DPI, and very often I like denote it in the sense of DPI raised to the power of AI, just like X square, DPI exponentially, how DPI's reach can be expanded by use of AI. So that's the vision that we have, to leverage AI to enable services in all languages, enable voice-enabled services, to ensure that reach of public services goes around, and AI also adds to the efficiency and productivity in the whole economy. To realize this vision, what we felt was that how can India catch up with China and the US, who are much ahead. We felt that there was something that was lacking in our AI story. So we did extensive consultations with academia, with industry, with startups, and we felt that while we do have the talent, but the biggest bottlenecks that we have is the amount of money that we invest in R&D, the amount of support that we provide to startups, and more importantly, lack of available data sets for training models or building applications, or availability and accessibility of high-end compute, which was very expensive. So based on these consultations that we did, we came up with our 7-pillar strategy, which focuses all the 7 key pillars, 7 key bottlenecks that we had, in order to ensure that we are able to move ahead on this ecosystem. What are these 7 pillars? In a nutshell, first and foremost, of course, is to make compute available and accessible, GPUs as we call it, and one company has almost monopoly over GPUs, NVIDIA. So we did we came out with an innovative model in which we incentivize the private sector to invest into the compute, so that they kind of put in the money, they make compute available, and we incentivize the end users. So those who are needing compute, they should be able to get it at a low cost. So today we do have around 38,000 GPUs which are available at a very low cost of 65 rupees per GPU per hour, which is less than $1 per GPU per hour compared to the global prices of $2.5 to $3. So that problem has been solved to some extent with extensive investment by the private sector. Then of course we are building a datasets platform that we call it AI Kosh, on which we are ensuring the datasets from both public sector and private sector is made available, so that those who are wanting to build models, those who are trying to train models or build application, they can leverage their datasets and build their AI application. That's very important pillar. Today we have got more than 3,000 datasets, trying to build it like the Hugging Face for India. Then of course foundation models is something that we have been like wanting to have an Indian foundation model. Yes, there are many foundation models which have been developed in the US and the China, but given the talent that we have and given the linguistic diversity and the cultural context of India, we wanted to have our own foundation models. We are supporting around 12 proposals for building foundation models, and a few of them, especially the one that's being done by Sarvam and the one that Bharat Jen and IIT Bombay is building, they should be able to come out with the first set of foundation models before we host a summit in February. Then we have application development pillar, in which we are supporting applications across the different sectors, whether it's healthcare, agriculture, governance, climate change, education, learning disabilities. We are developing higher applications which can be deployed at scale. Then the other pillar that we have is of skilling. The 5th pillar is about skilling. Even though we do have a talent advantage, but how do we ensure that we retain that? So for that we are supporting even BTech projects, undergrad projects and master's projects and research projects for students who are working on AI related aspects. And this fellowship that we started with engineering, today we have expanded it to other disciplines also. So whether somebody is doing an AI project in medicine or law or commerce or liberal arts, humanities, psychology, there also we are supporting with the fellowships. So for ensuring that we are able to nurture AI talent. Then we are setting up data labs across the country, because the jobs that will come up in this economy will be data scientists, data annotators. So for these people we are training youth to become data scientists by setting up data labs across. The 6th pillar of course is startup financing, because the startups do need money at various stages, more at the pre-seed and the seed stage. So we are setting up a fund of funds as also an accelerator incubator model to provide funding support to startups. And 7th, last not the least, is the safe and trusted pillar. How do we build tools for ensuring that whatever AI applications are developed conform to the responsible AI guidelines that we have? We came out with the IndiaAI AI guidelines, which was published last week, but having tools to test for bias, to ensure that models are conformed to ethical AI certification, to detect deep fakes. These tools we are developing along with the AI Safety Institute. Of course, these are 7 pillars. I can go on and on, but instead of making it a monologue, I will just try to.
You have pretty much covered all the questions I had on the podcast, but you've laid it out beautifully. Maybe we'll pick up a few threads and a few pillars. Maybe we dive into the AI compute and AI innovation.
Yeah, no, so first of all, thank you Abhishek Ji for doing this. And thank you for your service to the nation. I just, as a context, we have a IIT Kanpur 92 group, people coming in and out. And he has always been such a nation first view, giving out views. So thank you. Secondly, on the first two pillars of compute, we have already seen progress. I know you engage, you mentioned Sarvam, other companies. I know you've engaged with NESA on infrastructure, Yota, many companies we have Krutrim. That is definitely showing results on the ground. Now that I have the time with you, 65 rupees, sir, thoda kam hai. So NVIDIA is not dropping its prices. Companies have to raise money and they have to make money also. So leaving that aside, when you see, and it is very hard for these companies which require a lot of private capital to be able to raise capital unless what you have done through the AI mission, you have ignited TIHs and essentially providing some form of anchor clients, that's very critical. Because like you said, it feels like we are way behind US and China. US is driven completely by hyperscalers, billions of dollars of cash flows. I guess one question for you is on the compute side, just on this side, what does, and models, maybe models is clearer to me, what does success look like in your mind for 5 years out? Is there a way, what we have observed looking at the TIH spending is it's quarter to quarter. Whereas if you ask some of the large investors who want to come in, they'll say, we are very happy with what the sovereign is doing and we are happy to take sovereign risk, but can we get some more visibility, not just quarter to quarter? So is this a thought process of the next gen now? How do we get to the next stage?
No, very true. In fact, as we move forward, because right now the major compute that we have funded is going towards supporting companies which are building foundation models. But building foundation models is just one milestone in the entire journey. Ultimately, those foundation models will need to get developed into applications which will benefit people. And for doing this, what we'll need is inferencing at scale. And inferencing will require a lot more compute. So for example, if in a country like India, if 100 million people or 500 million people ideally, if they start using AI applications for say healthcare or accessing farmers, accessing information about weather or about what fertilizer they should use or what pesticide they should use, if we kind of ensure that smartness and intelligence is made available as a service to every Indian in every sector, and we ensure that every sector becomes more efficient and more productive, whether it's agriculture or whether it's MSME or whether it's retail, so then we'll have a lot of gains to come. But to enable this, initially I don't think there will be a business model in which people will be willing to pay for these services. So we'll need to provide a lot of inferencing support to companies which will be building these solutions and deploying it. So that will mean that like almost 100 to 200,000 GPUs cluster that we'll have, we'll need an orchestration layer on which this will be provided. So instead of a quarter to quarter or short-term contracts that we have currently, ultimately we'll have to have longer term contract, 3 to 5 year or maybe 7 year contracts with those who are providing the compute infrastructure, and that will also make their business model viable. Yeah. Because right now what is happening is, of course, 65 rupees is the cost that they quoted. In fact, I was myself surprised. Yeah. But then in a Sarkari procurement system, if you get a price which is L1 and meets all the technical criteria, then you are stuck.
Bound to take it.
So we hope that that they are able to make money, because if they don't make money, my project doesn't succeed. Because it's like every stakeholder has to benefit. If there is no ROI, then how will IndiaAI Mission succeed? So we have to ensure that every stakeholder is taken care of and makes reasonable returns and be able to contribute to the overall mission.
Yeah. Before Vikram moves to the next point, one of the things you said, if 100, 200, 500 million people start using it. My son was doing a paper for his college or something on this whole, the threat of AI on labor. One of the things people sometimes don't think about when we think about the various classes in India, हम लोग generally सोचते हैं on the basis of income, but it's also been on the basis of the level of knowledge and access, and that can actually become, it can actually make it flat, it democratized and flat. It is so exciting. Then you don't. It's not that you are ahead because you had better access to knowledge.
I think we talk often about what is the DPI moment for AI. And it is this, what you just said, this low-cost inferencing at population scale. And India has always done this differently, right? When mobile explosion happened, it was essentially at a cost that nobody imagined.
Correct.
And at a scale that nobody imagined, which made the cost possible. Yeah. And it sounds like that's the same approach that you're taking into this AI space with the GPU cluster, as well as what cost it will take to provide sort of AI on tap to every Indian.
Exactly. In fact, I'll just give you a simple example. Like when we were district collectors in our service, we spend a lot of time in the hinterland with तो हर साल वहाँ पे जब every year before a crop season, Kharif or Rabi, we'll do a goshti, a krishi goshti, in which the progressive farmers were rewarded. The farmers who have the maximum yield or doing some exotic crops and all, they were rewarded. And I would invariably, when I talk to those farmers, these are the farmers who had access to the Krishi Vigyan Kendra, who knew the local agriculture fellows, so they will be able to get the best seeds, best fertilizers, best advisories. So what AI has the potential, especially voice enabled services, to democratize this knowledge. Every farmer should be able to get this information, just like I talk to an Alexa or a Siri, ask this query on a voice mode कि भाई मेरे खेत में कीड़े लग रहे हैं सरसों की क्रॉप में क्या करूं, and get a voice reply back. And what we have tried in some of the projects that we have done is that when it works voice input and voice output, then you don't even need a smartphone. You can do with a feature phone with a toll free number on which you call, voice is the input and backend पे आपका सारा speech to text and the Gen AI APIs and all will work. But ultimately, if in real time, if you are able to give the right answer in the mother tongue of the person who is making the query, it will be transformational.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can transform education, it can transform healthcare, it can transform agriculture, almost all services.
I'm going to move to the next two pillars, which is the India AI data set and the application layer. And when you said DPI to the power of AI, as a fintech investor for the last 15 years, my ears really perked up in terms of interest. I've always thought that we have a structural advantage because we have DPI and we have this consent layer that you can access the data for every Indian, which means almost like a personalized AI can be made for every Indian. Do you think that structural advantage can be utilized, and where are we on that journey?
See, like our DEPA architecture that we conceptualized first in 2015, which allowed consent-based data sharing, that has been the cornerstone for our development of India stack or development of services, wherein my information will be with me and with my consent I will be able to share with the third party. That works beautifully in the context of AI also, where data security and data protection becomes very important. The same architecture can be used for AI training, wherein we can define the role every player in the ecosystem plays, and when we are able to enable data sharing. For example, if data that is available with, say, Ministry of Rural Development, they run a program called Manrega in which they spend 150,000 crores every year, and that's basically given for wage employment for people who are poor. If that data is shared with, say, health also is a program in which they give health insurance of 500,000 or 5 lakh rupees to everyone who is poor. Anybody who is doing a wage labor is by natural poor. That's why he is doing that. So he can be given that service automatically without he having to apply for it.
Yeah.
Because the moment you apply, our last mile delivery systems in public service is ridden with all kinds of problems: corruption, middlemen, bribery, all of that. But if we can use the data sharing protocols, consent-based data sharing protocols, which is also enabled by the DPDP Act that we have and the rules which were notified yesterday. So that would ensure that we will be able to implement public service programs more efficiently, more effectively. And if we are able to do that, it will mean so much of difference in the way we run our country.
When you think of the applications, and you alluded to it in your early words, that you want to see more things in education, more things in health, and in some ways the DPI movement which took off with UPI in financial services didn't really happen. Are you seeing with this AI wave that some of those projects, whether it was the health stack, whether it was the ed stack, those can actually get more momentum with this?
Exactly, because see, for example, education. What we find is that I have worked for a long period in the extreme northeastern state of Nagaland, and very often we find that in many schools we don't just have science and maths teachers. So there is, again, AI tutor can really solve that problem in many ways, so that at least a child can able to query and get a reply back. Even in public schools in Delhi and all, what I find is that most teachers go by the learning abilities of the top 5% of the class. When those kids say that I've understood, they move on. And if a child keeps on asking questions, very often he is made to feel dumb or ashamed of asking stupid questions. What I've seen is AI tutors never get bugged. If you keep on asking, explain me Archimedes principle or Pythagoras theorem in different ways, it will keep on explaining you, and if you ask a dumb question, it will make the answer more simpler so that you understand that. So that knowledge gap that we have and the learning gap that we have because of teachers not being able to do jobs in the, and very often the AI tutors are able to do that in local language also. So that's again very, very powerful. So the access of education, access of healthcare, access of agricultural services, bringing efficiency in logistics, in manufacturing, in MSME, in retail, this will result in a lot of productivity gains. And just like we have become efficient, हम ChatGPT use करते हैं क्या होता है? I'm able to do more with less. If a 600-page income tax code नया आया, I just put in how am I going to be impacted on my personal taxes. I don't read the whole document, I get it. I am able to save time. I become more efficient. If the same efficiency, productivity gains are transferred to other sectors like healthcare or agriculture or education or logistics or manufacturing, we have a lot to gain.
I think the power of AI is two things. One, it's actually becoming more inclusive and fair in some ways. And the other is we are seeing that people are okay, like you said, being more vulnerable with AI because it doesn't get impatient with you in some ways.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep moving to the next one on skilling, and I know it's very close to your heart.
So, you know, we were in the US and we were having a debate because our team had just come back from China. We were seeing all this activity. We have a pre-seed fund called DeVc, which has invested in 45 companies started by Indians, but who have very quickly moved to the US. वो सब मोटा मोटी AI ही कर रहे हैं. They were saying कि India का world में क्या role है इसमें? China तो पूरा कर रहा है, DeepSeek ये वो, US is clear. And there were two things that came up. When we met companies that were all had good product market fit with AI products, and we said, well, we are hearing you can go from 1 million to 10 million to 50 million. What is the constraint? They said the constraint is integration with the customer. And now there's a new term, I don't know if you have heard it, it came from a company called Palantir, forward deployed engineer. And the FDE, it doesn't have to be on the customer side. So actually हमारी दो companies में वो FDE दो न्यूयॉर्क में, दो इंडिया में, बैंगलोर में, right? So this sparked a thought कि we know the employment is going to be challenged in all our big IT services companies. Is it India's moment with getting this FDE thing going? आपने data labs की बात की. We have all seen at one point proliferation of the private sector of NITs, aptechs, फिर उसके बाद cyber cafes when I had come back and started. You mentioned data labs. Sounded like that was a government initiative. तो इसमें एक तो was an input that I think there is something here. I would love to figure out a way where the ecosystem collaborates. That if in 3-4 years, people are just looking out there and saying, let me get certified and become a forward deployed engineer. And just to give you, this is a story you like, my household help son has come from Bihar, actually no, from Ayodhya, to do computer science here. And he's in year 2 now and he comes for advice. He said, भैया क्या करूँ, मेरे को लग रहा है AI करूँ कि मैं marketing करूँ, ऐसे बहुत से AI कर. Get, whether it's a diploma, whatever, get certified. So I think, how have you thought about it? One, on the, I would say the 2 Ds, deployment, because we have a population advantage. And the second, data you mentioned, we could also become, for healthcare, now I don't know where it sits in regulation, but all the testing that can happen and backfitting of the data, we could also become, so we say make in India, we could also say train in India, get trained in India, like all of these. Too ambitious? What do you think?
No, it can be done. It can be done. And on the skilling piece, in fact, we both have an opportunity and a risk. Because what is going to happen is that, especially in coding has been like one of our key strengths as a country, and we have almost 6 million people in this sector who are working, and with the tools like GitHub Copilot coming in, Cursor AI coming in, what is happening is that most coders are able to use these tools to code faster, and that would ultimately lead to some coding jobs, low value coding jobs, becoming redundant. So it becomes very, very important that what do we do, and if this sector of our employment, especially ITS sector, gets kind of impacted adversely, it will become a big risk for our entire FMCG sector, housing sector, because they are the ones who spend money. So we do need to address that gap, and whether we train them as FDEs or make them as experts in agentic AI or physical AI, data, where AI is going, or data, that is what we need to do as a nation. And we need to, we are in fact talking to NASSCOM and the big IT companies that we will have to, if a company like TCS, Infosys, Wipro, they don't take this up as a challenge and build their own models. Because again, another risk is that if we allow our engineers to use Cursor AI or GitHub Copilot, all our intelligence will ultimately get transferred to those models. So we do need to have an indigenous coding engine which retains the knowledge that we have, and a company like TCS with all the expertise that they have for 50 years of code repository that they must be having, they can easily make a coding engine. So we do need to invest in such sectors, think of such professions which are coming up, whether it's FDEs or any other sector, use AI for design, use AI for animation, filmmaking, creative fields. So those are the opportunities that we have to identify, come out with a structured skilling training program and ensure that we retain our advantage in this sector.
Yeah.
I think overall it's also a good moment to be talking about this, because globally what everyone is talking about is AI is failing at production scale. Proof of concept चल जाता है, but जैसे ही बड़ी organization ने चलाते तो नहीं चल रहा. And that's where India has always played a role. Whether it's mobile, whether it's cloud, we do all the boring work that nobody wants to do. And I think we really need to focus on what is all the boring, messy work that the world needs for it to work at scale. And वहाँ पे घुस जाओ. Like FT is one version of it, but it could be the data plumbing and just the data re-engineering that needs to be done for to be done at AI at scale. So I think we really need to identify some of these.
Yep.
I'm going to keep this conversation moving, and I saw that the final DPDP rules are out just last week, and I can see how the safe and trusted AI is sort of front and center. We actually have a free AI policy response that we are drafting. I'll show that to you as well. What would be your advice to founders who are building for India on at the top level? What should they keep in mind? What is safe and trusted AI? How do they incorporate it in their startup business plan at the beginning?
Ultimately, safe and trusted is something that will work in everybody's favor. So whenever anyone who is like a founder or a startup who's trying to do, first and foremost they have to be very clear about what problem they are going to solve. Because ultimately it should result in some tangible solution to a erstwhile problem which is there. So we have seen that happening in food delivery, quick commerce and all. Ultimately the sub-problem is being solved, people are benefiting for it. And when we are doing that, if we are servicing customers, when you are dealing with their data, the principles of DPDP are very clear. You take the personal data only for the purpose for which it has been given. If you want to use it for any other objective, you have to take the consent of the data principal and then process it accordingly. So that basic principle if you have, if you don't try to act smart in the sense that think that I will fool the customer and use his data and sell it to someone else, which has been going on in this country. That's why we get all these pesky insurance calls and all of it. So if we don't have that model for data monetization, and if we really try to ensure that my incomes and my revenues will come from my product value, then it will solve.
I think actually we should ban this word, this data monetization. Because as soon as you start thinking like that, you start thinking in a
See, data monetization, I don't think one should ban. One should ban because we always say that data has value, and if you don't monetize data, how do you realize the value? So, but there is a protocol for realizing that value, data monetization. So, like on our AI Kosh, what we say is that every data owner or data fiduciary who is publishing data sets on the platform will define the policies under which the data sharing will happen. It can happen through mandatory licensing, it can be open, it can be cost, but that policy has to be defined, it has to be uniform. So there is nothing wrong per se with data monetization, but data monetization without consent, data monetization without defining the policy, the principle, that is what something that's wrong.
Super.
startup financing.
So you mentioned the fund of funds. We generally the industry comes to you with us. What else can we do? We appreciate the funding that is set up. What else can we do to collaborate? Specifically as it comes to skilling, it's something in our vision of Viksit Bharat, which we are inspired by, and we changed our name because of that to Z47. That does seem like both the biggest threat and the biggest opportunity. So anything we can do to collaborate? What else do you think the ecosystem needs to do, and anything in particular for the February event that we can collaborate
like on skilling on the data labs and all, what I have personally felt is that we have built 27 data labs with the NILET, with our government agency, and we have built 4 data labs in partnership with the industry. On an average, my government data labs has taken almost 9 to 12 months to come in operations. The industry data labs, we are able to get them going within 3 months. So the speed at which industry can help us execute projects is something that we would love to do. Now, in the next 1 year, 1 to 1.5 years, I have to do 600 more data labs. So again, if I go by my usual government of India's or state government's approach of tendering, finding a solution, doing that, we ultimately are not able to do as good a job as industry does. If we can set up these data labs in partnership with industry, for example, that we identify the location where they are going, but actual execution and all, we fund it also, most of it is done by industry. Then the courses that we are running, that of course we have got it done in partnership with industry, the curriculum, ultimately what are we training them for? Because ultimately anyone who is trained in a data lab will ultimately be employed by the industry. We are not going to employ all of them. So it's better that they acquire skills which the industry needs it. Otherwise they will have to hire them and then train them. So if we save that cost for the industry, industry will be willing to partner. So that's one area in which we can easily join hands. The other area that we are working on, the startup financing pillar. Of course, the deep tech startup fund of funds is there, but on a similar model for AI, we are trying to work out in a system on a model in which we co-invest with startups, in which we identify funds and we identify VCs and we select them, and then we kind of allow them to choose the companies in which they would invest. And then whenever they are investing, we kind of match that investment to a particular level and at the same equity, at the same valuation that is done. So that would also solve two problems. One, the subjectiveness that comes in a government-led selection of startups, that will be eliminated. Number two, more professional inputs will be there, and ultimately we'll be able to do the same thing faster. So that's something that we are working on, and I'm sure there will be a lot of inputs that funds and VCs and investors can give for that.
Super. Thank you again. Thank you for your time. And thank you for what you are doing. Any closing remarks for the audience? There are founders, VCs, other people in the ecosystem, including companies, hopefully like TCS.
No, I would just like to say that the concluding remark is that we are hosting the Impact Summit in February 2026, which will see almost the whole world converging, and we have confirmations from almost 15 to 20 heads of state who will be there. We'll have almost all the big industry leaders, all the names that we keep on hearing about, whether it's NVIDIA or whether it's Anthropic or whether it's Microsoft or Google, all of them will be here, OpenAI. Then we'll also have a lot of researchers from across the world, from universities, from Raj Reddy to Jan LeCun to Yoshua Benju, all of them will be here. So look forward to an active involvement for the entire AI stakeholders at the conference. Details are there on impact.indiaai.gov.in. There are ways to partner, there are ways to join. So look forward to having you all be here in February and also join in the various endeavors that we have launched already.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for doing it.
sir.
Thank you.
If you like this episode of Zero to Infinity, there are so many more that you must check out. If you like Indian startup content, hearing about founder journeys, or knowing more about emerging sectors that we're investing in, Zero to Infinity is the channel that you need to subscribe to.